So can we have a discussion about how ridiculous it is to take too much consideration of what the polls say? Like, it drives me crazy. This is why I hate horse race politics. I love talking about policy. I freaking hate the horse race. And it's because of this reason. Analyzing every little poll. We're humans, okay? There's human error. There are bad judgments. There are political agendas. There's so many different factors that influence these polls. Take them with a grain of salt. I get it. People are interested in it because they want to predict what's going to happen during the primaries. Take it with a grain of salt. They mean nothing.
Well,
they mean very little.
They
mean very little. Okay, so that's the reason why I don't like getting involved in these discussions about polls. I don't care about.
Well, I disagree with you. I hear you, and a lot of people feel that way. But I think you're mistaken. I think they mean a lot, and they're usually right. And of course, campaigns, although every candidate will say, I don't really pay attention to polls.
Except for Trump.
Right, but except for Trump. But they do, of course, because it's how they tailor their message. They know when something's working and when something's not working. They're out to win, and this is a measure of how you're going to win. And from a coverage point of view, of course, what reporters love are stories that, again, it goes back to the original of, you teach journalism, man bites dog is the big story because that doesn't happen. So if Bernie Sanders tonight beats the polling average of 18, and it will be the biggest win in history of an upset of a polling average, beating 17.4 in 1984, which is the previous high. That will give him a different kind of boost, especially in a state that matters, a state that a big impact state that looks like the Democratic Party.
Yes, so I agree with you that politicians should pay attention to the polls to some extent and maybe tailor their message to ensure that they win in the primaries. I totally get that. There's some value to doing these polls. There's some value for these polls to be out there. But at the same time, I feel like there's too much weight on these polls when it comes to political coverage in the news, right? There's too much emphasis on them.
That's true.
And so that's my only criticism. John, you're the #1 offender of this. It drives me crazy.
I find them extremely interesting, and I think that there are ones that are wrong, and when I predict that the polls are wrong, I try to make it based on other data that's been gathered. But overall, I'm sure 538 is going to have some big final closing, not tweet, but whatever blog post about it. They've almost always been right generally. And there's been a couple of places where they've been wrong so far, but they are generally very accurate. And when we are trying to figure not just who's going to win, but these polls give us a chance to look at what effect they have on other events like debates, like wins in earlier contests. What effect are they having? Changes in these polls for later contests allow us to say, did this debate help him or did it not? It's one of the only pieces of actual data we have. Which is why I want to look at them. I want to talk about them.
The great thing is that I want to Anna said the only smart thing that race for president has very little to do with policy. It is. It's not just a horse race, but we're electing a person, and we have to like that person. They have to make us feel a certain way.
I know it's unfortunate because we put too much weight on things that don't matter. And I love policy. I'm obsessed with policy. I don't care about the horse race, but I know that for some people it's extremely important, including the polls.